Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of How Do I Start This? My name is Celeste. If this is your first time here, welcome. We talk all things rap and hip hop here. So make sure that you like and subscribe if this is your type of thing. Also leave a comment. I'm interested in talking back to y'all. It's not just me recording videos and talking into a void. I do want to have a dialogue with y'all. So yeah, make sure you comment and let me know what's on your mind. Okay. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the chains and whips video. On Twitter, I said that I was going to give an analysis, and I actually put my professor hat on for this, y'all. If you're not familiar with me, it's your first time here, I am a professor of African American Studies. It's also the thing that I'm most passionate about alongside hip hop. So I'm always excited when I can combine hip hop and African American Studies into the classroom and outside of the classroom, all that good stuff. So yeah, I just want to start this by saying that one thing about art is that it's very, I think for the most part, it's very open-ended, which means that it's open for multiple interpretations. With that being said, my interpretation is not law. I'm not saying that by any means. These are just some of the things that kind of piqued my interest as I was watching the video. Also, if you see me looking down, I took notes, like I said, on some real professor type stuff. I took notes. And I also I'll put pictures in the video so you guys can see what I'm talking about too. So, yeah, there are several ways you can analyze this video, but for me, I'm choosing to analyze chains and whips under the frame of expressionism and neo-expressionism. Now, if you're not familiar with, different art styles or different art movements throughout history, expressionism was a type of art that was done in the early 20th century. It started, I believe, in Germany, and then, kind of gained popularity worldwide. If not Germany, it definitely started in Europe, but I'm pretty sure it was Germany. And it gained widespread popularity in the early 20th century. And expressionism usually consists of art that is that uses non-natural colors and is very distorted, and that's done to basically illustrate the intensity of human emotions and also the complexity of the human psyche. And so when looking at this video, you can definitely tell that right away there's a lot of distortion, and I'll get into that in a minute. And so that is expressionism as it emerged as an art and cultural movement in the early 20th century. And then what you have later, in the 70s and the 80s, is neo-expressionism. And neo-expressionism, at least as I understand it, borrows from elements of expressionism, but the artists who created sculptures and paintings during this time, they often used very rough materials, and they often weren't afraid to portray violence and just very realistic situations in order to make a statement or a social commentary on social inequality or social justice, right? And so one of the most prominent figures of the neo-expressionist movement, at least in America, would be Basquiat, who is or who was a famous painter who gained he was not just a painter too, he was a painter, a sculptor, and a graffiti artist, and he gained prominence in New York City and globally throughout the 80s. And so when I was looking at this video, all of that, it was just coming to my mind. Okay, so yeah, so I'm using Basquiat, expressionism, and neo-expressionism to kind of lay the groundwork for some of the things that I'm talking about throughout this video. So I'm gonna just give you guys 5 key points, because if not, we would be here all day. Visual analysis is literally something I do for a living, so we literally could be here forever. But I'm just gonna point out some of the things that I found the most interesting. So I already talked about the first one. and how it kind of reminded me of Expressionism and getting portrayed Black American life through a neo-expressionist lens. But this video specifically reminded me of the Basquiat. I wouldn't even say it's a painting. It's more of like a picture. I think it's like a graffiti piece that he did, and I'll insert it here. It's called God Law. And as you can see in the painting, the picture, there's scales, right? There's scales, and under them it says God and law, and you can see that the scales are tipped towards the category of law. And even though the money is in the middle of this, or under the scales, in my opinion, the money looks to be leaning more towards the law side. And so the reason that Chains and Whips reminded me of this is because from the beginning, you can see that the video features heavy themes of religion and the judicial system, right? And I think even you can make that argument for the entire album, right? The album is called Let God Sort Them Out, right? And it's very, like, I hate to like use a cliche term, but it's like this very come to Jesus moment, right? Where both Clipse and Malice are having to, like, you know, navigate the complexity of, you know, getting money and means of luxury, and possibly in a moral way, and what that means, you know, for them, right, as people, right? And so, sorry, back to my original point, but in the video itself, like I said, there are the themes of religion and law are not only presented in the video, but they're also like completely juxtaposed to one another throughout the video. So you can see in the beginning of the video, it starts with an inmate who's appearing to be making a phone call to who I interpreted as his mom, and she it's him on, it may be him as one person, or maybe it's two people. I have to go back and look, and I'll have to go back and look, but basically it's like her in between him as he's making the call, and she's kind of like what I would call wailing, right? And so it's just this, and even in the beginning, there's the scene where it looks like the inmates are like what look like to be in a fight, like maybe in a prison fight, and then right next to it you have the little kids who seem to be like hugging each other, and we later see those, you know, kids in a church. So throughout the video, you can very much see that the themes of religion and law are very much intertwined and entangled in a way that makes you think about, you know, well, what is morality, what is ethical in a system that has continuously subjugated Black bodies and labeled those bodies as criminals, right? I think another thing too that I want to point out is, like I said, in Basquiat's painting, the scales are tipped towards law and lean more towards law, and I think that kind of is reinforced in the lyrics, beat the system with chains and whips. And I think the way I interpret that line is like Malice and Push saying basically like the way to get out of this structural oppression or the systematic oppression is to achieve luxury, is to achieve financial means, even if you have to do that, you know, unethically, right? And I interpret that as it being a reversal of whips and chains, right? So usually when you hear the phrase, you know, chains or whips, you hear the whips and chains come first, right? But in the song and in the title, Malice and Pusha reverse it, right, to show that they're getting out of the system and they're beating it through acquiring luxury. And I also think it's interesting too that like they're reversing it when historically like whips and chains were the things that kept Black Americans like physically subordinated under the system of slavery. So it's like they're like turning that on its head. Number two, one thing that stood out to me, and I would love to hear you guys' commentary on it, is I feel like Black women bear the brunt of emotional, I don't think turmoil is the right word. What am I trying to say? I think what they're saying is, I think what they're showing is that Black women bear the emotional burden for the entire Black community in America, and they have done so historically. And so even at the beginning of the video, we see this Black woman, she's just standing there with her guitar, and then she ends up, beginning to play the guitar. And to me, this kind of like reminded me, even though they don't look alike, it did remind me of like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and her being, one of the pioneers, if not the pioneer, of rock and roll. It kind of like, maybe I'm reaching a little bit. Y'all can tell me if you think I'm reaching, but just seeing her with the guitar, it instantly reminded me of Sister Rosetta Tharpe. I feel like the men go through emotions in this video as well. Like you can see, like it's expressive on their faces, but like for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, but like you can definitely see the pain, I guess, the pain and the resilience, and the joy, and all the different human emotions that people go through. You can definitely see that on the Black women's faces throughout this video, and I thought that was very significant. So not only do Black women bear, the emotional burden as a result of like all the turmoil that the Black community goes through, I think this video also demonstrated that Black women are resilient and they're able to create, right? And so you have like I said, the beginning scene with the woman with the guitar. She's creating music even in the midst of that despair. We also see a woman holding her baby. She's smiling even though everything around her seems to kind of like not be good, right? And even herself, she's dressed, like not in luxury, right? And yet she's still smiling, looking at her baby and looking at this beautiful thing that she's created. And we also, after that, see an actual shot of a beauty pageant with 3 women that represent Miss Georgia and Miss Virginia, and then I think the middle one has Miss Black USA or Miss Black America. Yeah, it's a representation of an actual beauty pageant that speaks to not only Black women and their beauty, but also Black women in the South specifically. And I think that is important, especially where we live in a time where like Black Southern culture is kind of like, I don't want to say looked down upon, but in some ways, I guess for lack of better terms, looked down upon. I think Malice and Pusha aim to show the brilliance and the beauty of Black women from the South and how they've, basically birthed this, this beautiful culture. At least that's how I interpreted it. The frequent inclusion of children was very significant to me. The video begins with children, with a baby. And I saw on Twitter that somebody like compared it to the Notorious B.I.G. cover, Ready to Die. And so they felt like maybe Clipse were drawing comparisons from that. I think that's one interpretation, but I think the way that I looked at it is that with the children being at the beginning of the video, and then throughout, for me, it speaks to the loss of innocence that Black children often go through under the system, right? And you can see from different parts of the video that the children are mouthing the words of the song too, right? It's this very adult song, with explicit lyrics. They're mouthing it as well. And I think that was very important in showing that how a lot of times with Black kids, they're not given that luxury of just like being kids, right? Like they come into consciousness of what the world is about, or can be about very early, whether that's racism, classism, all of the social inequalities. I think Black children come into that awareness very early, and you see that in the video as well. Another thing that stood out to me was the concept of surveillance. And so there's a shot of what seems to be a prison guard. It's a shadowy figure. Can't see his face. He's just kind of like standing in a building, and that instantly reminded me of something called the panopticon. So if you're not familiar with the panopticon, this was a concept offered and popularized by French philosopher Michel Foucault, and the idea is that well, first let me break down the panopticon. So the panopticon is basically a circular prison where there's a central guard in the tower, and because he's in the center, he can see all of, you know, the inmates in the prison. But because the inmates are like aware of, you know, that they're being surveilled, it leads to them basically regulating themselves and behaving in a certain way. And so when I saw that shot, it reminded me of that concept, because one, you have the shadowy figure standing in the building, and then two, there's like 2 or 3 scenes throughout the video where there is a guy running from the police and you don't see anybody. Like, you just see it through the window shield lens, right? And you can't see who's surveilling him. You can make the assumption that it's the police because he's like running, but you can just see that like no one's watching him, but he is like, he's not regulating himself, but he is like, you can tell that he's being surveilled, and he knows that he's being surveilled, so he's like running away. And so all that along, that was like a long way of me saying that the video talks about the way that Black communities are surveilled and the way that Black communities are criminalized. You not only see it from the guy running from the police, but you actually see it with the police officers slamming the Black men on the hoods of the cars throughout prison, right? And they're being, you know, led down the walkway by police officers. So I think the surveillance and the criminalization of our communities was a huge theme throughout this video. And I think that it was, I mean, this is like not new stuff. I think that this is, I think if you watch this, you would like obviously get this. Like, it didn't take like a rocket scientist, but I just thought that, I don't know, I just thought that it was very profound that Malice and Pusha decided to use their, you know, art in this way, because I think a lot of times they're labeled as coke rappers, or they just rap about coke, and I don't think that a lot of times people go deeper to actually explore what them rapping about coke means. Like, they're not just rapping about coke for the sake of rapping about coke. It's more so about, you know, trying to escape poverty and surveillance and criminality, and trying to escape being whipped and chained so that you can have chains and whips, right? Like, and so I think that by them offering this deeper layer of from a visual standpoint, it's also to show us, the audience, that it's not just about coke rap. It's not just about how much cocaine they sell. That sounds cool, right? Like, oh, they're so cool, they sell so much coke. Like, that sound good, right? But like, because that's easier to accept, right? Nobody wants to go, it's not a good feeling to have to look at, well, why are they selling coke? You know, what conditions led to them selling coke, right? And I think that they're forcing us to tap into that by creating a video like this that's making those statements. So something else that I like that Clipse included themselves in the painting to illustrate that, you know, they are also a part of it. There was a part in the video where they're standing next to the woman with the guitar. They're in the room with her, you know, like dancing to the music with her. And then there's also a part where both Pusha and Malice throughout the video, their faces are distorted with everyone else as well. And I thought that was them showing that they're very much a part of the community, and that, you know, you know, these are things that they've dealt with as well. Again, kind of tapping into that message that, like, we're not just talking about coke, like we're talking about the things that we have to go through and how we basically had to, I don't want to say overcome systematic injustice, but that's what it is. But I know some people are going to be like, that's a reach, but it's not. But yeah, that's basically what they're trying to communicate, is that their story is bigger than coke. And by distorting their faces and including them in that way, I think it kind of shows that they're part of this lineage of Black Americans working to like free themselves from that, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you view it, by any means necessary. Okay, and the last thing that I want to talk about, so there was a lot of like hoopla about like Kendrick not being in the video. I didn't think Kendrick would be in the video, honestly, because he's on tour right now. Like, I didn't think that he would be in the video. I don't know if he would have been in the video even if he wasn't on tour. If I'm being completely honest, obviously I don't know him. I can't speak for him, but like from my perspective, I feel like we are lucky that we got the 2 videos from Kendrick that we got. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to create videos, but I do get the impression that, like, you know, videos are like not his priority, right? And when he does give us videos, like they're amazing, right? And they make a cultural statement. But I don't know. I just get the feeling that like videos are not his priority, right? Because I could imagine it takes a lot. You gotta film, you gotta do this, you gotta be here. Like, it's just a lot. So I could imagine that that's not one of his priorities. However, I think him not being in the video is actually can be read or interpreted in a good way. So he's not in the video, and as his verse begins, you see different people rapping his verse. Notably a Black woman and a little Black girl both rap his verse, and then different people kind of rap some of it, the rest of it throughout into the video's end. And I think that like you could read that as like, if you were just like, you know, just like really just like digging into it, I think you could read that as like Kendrick like also like showing himself a part of that lineage of being a part of the Black community, and like not being in the video means that he's not making it about him, right? And so he's having these people rap his words, and it's basically like showing that his words, you know, are through, you know, other people, right? And so he's having other people tell his story because they are the story as well. And I think that from this last year, and not even just this last year, we've seen this throughout Kendrick's career. He's always used his platform to tell the stories of people that typically are unheard. And so I think by him not being in the video, it kind of allows those people to like shine and tell those stories. Yeah, that's all that I got for y'all. I'm very interested in hearing y'all's interpretation of the video. I really enjoyed this video. Yeah, so overall, I enjoyed this video. I think this was very compelling. I'm very proud of the rollout that Clipse and Malice have created, because it's not just like, oh, new music. Like they've allowed us to feel something. They've allowed us to get to know them a little bit more, and it's just really dope. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. What are some of the things that you saw in the video? I'm sure I left a million things out. This video would be like an hour long if I went over everything, but I just wanted to kind of hit the key points. But yeah, let me know what you think about. Do you disagree with anything I said? Oh, one point I do want to add is that I talked about how black women bear the brunt of, you know, of the emotional burden of Black America. As Kendrick's verse starts, we see one of the Black beauty queens. She begins to mouth his verse, but you can also see that she has a tear running down her cheek, right? And as she has a tear running down her cheek, she raps the words, you know, I'm not the candidate to vibe with, I don't F with the kumbaya, you know. And I'm censoring because I don't know YouTube's policy, but I'm just being careful just in case. But you can see that, like, you know, even though she's crying, she's still standing strong, and like making her claim that, like, yeah, I'm not the one to mess with, you know, we ready, you know. And I think that is also speaks to the resilience and the beauty of black women as well. Another thing that I'll add, and I guess I don't have like a detailed analysis for it, but I think one of the things that's important is that because Clipse is great at world building, and because they're such great, compelling storytellers, I think that this created a space where black men could be seen and where black men can be heard. I think a lot of times the weight of the, not a lot of times, all the time, I think black men have to deal with so much. Like, you kings just have to deal with like a lot. And I really enjoyed watching black men be excited about this, engage with the music, and even see like, oh man, like, you know, this, I can identify with that, or this resonates with me. I think that's important. A lot of times black men are told not to feel, and they're told not to express their emotions. And I think Clipse have, just with this video and with this album, just like broken that down. And I think that's really cool to see. So at the end of the day though, I am not a black man. So if there are things that, for the black men that follow me, if there's things in the video that you picked up on, please share them. Please share them with me. Please share them in my comment section, so that we can make sure that we have a very, very lively discussion. I'm really enjoying this, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the next one. Bye.